Welcome back to the U.S. Navy History Podcast. I am Dale, and I am joined by the villain, Christoph.
Well, hey, wait a minute. Well, I guess okay. Hello is what I meant to say, listener. Thank you for joining us. We'll let you be the judge if I'm the villain. I don't think I am, but time will tell. Let's go and find out.
All righty. So, we are back covering WW and so we're going to continue where we stopped last, hopefully. Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's a great place to pick up.
let's get underway.
All right.
So, we're going down to the southern theaters. So, we're going to go over to the Balkans. So faced with Russia in the east and Austria-Hungary could only spare pretty much a third of its army to attack Serbia. They suffered heavy losses, and the Austrians, for a very, very brief time, occupied the Serbian capital, which is, do you know the Serbian capital?
Oh, I was hoping you wouldn't ask that. I I used to. Hold on, Serbia.
Come on, this is easy world geography.
The only thing that comes to mind is Montenegro, and I know that's wrong.
You are correct. That is wrong.
Okay, at least I'm right about something.
Belgrade.
Belgrade, of course.
So a Serbian counterattack in the Battle of Kolubra succeeded in driving them from the country by the end of 1914. For the first 10 months of 1915, Austria Hungary used most of its military reserves to go after Italy.
Mhm.
So the German and Austro Hungarian diplomats were able to score a coup by persuading Bulgaria to join the attack on Serbia. The Austro Hungarian provinces of Slovenia, Croatia, and Bosnia provided troops for the Austria Hungary fight with Serbia. Russia and Italy was in that fight as well. And Montenegro allied itself with Serbia.
Ah,
So they were coming in, they just did not have the information.
okay.
Bulgaria declared war on Serbia on October 14th of 1915 and joined in the attack by the Austro-Hungarian army under Mackinson's army of 250,000. That was already going on. So that made Serbia being conquered in just over a month because the Central Powers, which now included Bulgaria, sent in 600,000 troops. The Serbian army fighting on two fronts and facing, absolute 100% defeat, retreated into northern Albania. The Serbs did suffer a defeat in the Battle of Kosovo, and Montenegro
Yeah.
covered the Serbian retreat towards the Adriatic coast in the Battle of Wojak Wojkovac in January 6th to 7th of 1916. But ultimately, the Austrians also took them out. The surviving Serbian soldiers were evacuated by ship to Greece. After Serbia went down, they were divided. They were divided between Austria-Hungary and Bulgaria. So in late 1915, a Franco-British force landed in Solnoka. I hate European words.
They're tricky. I think on purpose. It's like they make you it's to see who's an outsider. Really? You know how you have local streets that are pronounced one way, but
Mm,
they're really spelled a different way? It's the same
mhm,
thing.
yeah.
It's just don't worry.
Salonika in Greece to offer assistance and to pressure its government to declare war against the Central Powers. The thing is, the pro German king Constantine I dismissed the pro Allied government of something I'm not going to try to pronounce before the Allied Expeditionary Force arrived. The friction between the King of Greece and the Allies continued to escalate with the National Schism, which effectively divided Greece between regions still loyal to the king and the new provisional government of Salonika. After intense negotiations with a armed confrontation in Athens between allied and royalist forces, the king of Greece resigned and his second son Alexander took his place, which
Huh.
mean which means that Greece joins the allies.
That part I didn't know, as far as the abdication and how that all went down. That's interesting.
Mhm. The Macedonian front was initially pretty much just static. It didn't go anywhere. It was just like, we're here, you're there, we're staying here, we're happy. The French and Serbian forces were able to retake limited areas by recapturing Bitola on November 19th of 1916. Serbian and French troops finally made a breakthrough in September in the Vardar offensive after most of the German and Austro Hungarian troops had been withdrawn. The Bulgarians were then defeated at the Battle of Dobro Pole, and by September 25th, British and French troops had crossed the border into Bulgaria proper as the Bulgarian army completely collapsed.
Yikes.
Yeah. Bulgaria surrendered 4 days later on September 20th.
Mm.
The German high command responded by detaching troops to hold the line, but these forces were far, far too weak to make a new front. So the disappearance of this front meant that the road to Budapest and Vienna was now open to the Allies. Hindenburg and Ludendorff concluded that the strategic and operational balance had now shifted decidedly against the Central Powers. And a day after the Bulgarian collapse, they insisted on an immediate peace settlement.
Wow.
All right, so let's jump over to the Ottoman Empire. So the Ottomans threatened Russia's Caucasian territories and Britain's communications with India via the Suez Canal.
Oh, that's right,
As
because that was completed in early 1900s, so this is a new thing.
yeah, this was very, very valuable canal.
Mhm.
Saves a lot of time in transit.
Absolutely.
I've been through the Suez
No kidding, really?
twice.
What's it like for us mariners?
Very, very hot, very, very sandy.
Hmm, that's not how I expected it to be, but yeah, that's how I expect when I see Egypt in my mind, that's what I see, so makes sense.
Yeah, we had to make sure that anything and everything that could be damaged by sand was protected.
I know what you mean, man.
All of
I
our
had a small Canon camera back in the early 2000s that I took to the beach. Huge mistake. The gears
yeah,
got gummed up. Never used it again.
yeah. We actually had to put in, bags on the ventilation intakes coming into the main machinery room where our air came
Hmm,
in down into the boat to catch all the sand that was coming through the ventilation.
dang.
Yep. It is not the best.
I'm glad you did that. I'm sure your cameras were all fine.
Oh, no, there was no cameras allowed.
Oh, yeah, I get it. Navy, wink, wink.
Mm, no winking involved. Yes. If you don't belong down there, if you're caught down there, you're getting arrested.
Yeah.
Okay, so as the conflict progressed, the Ottoman Empire took advantage of the European powers' preoccupation with the war and conducted large scale ethnic cleansing of the indigenous Armenian, Greek, and Parisian Christian populations. This was known as the Armenian Genocide, the Greek Genocide, and the Arisian Genocide.
Oh, yes. And if you know any Armenians in real life, they are very well aware of this and still bring it to the forefront because it was such a big deal for their community.
Oh, yeah. Any genocide is very, very
Yeah,
damaging to the people who went through its psyche and their descendants.
absolutely.
So the British and French opened overseas fronts with the Gallipoli and Mesopotamian campaigns.
Hmm.
So in Gallipoli, the Ottoman Empire successfully repelled the British, French, and Australian New Zealand Army Corps.
That was a
Eh,
mess.
yeah.
Like Australia still talks about that because that was kind of their moment of glory in a way. But oh my gosh, it was such a messed up deployment from the beginning, and the Ottomans had the advantage 100%. Like that was a disaster.
Yeah, you go in to prove yourself and you're fall flat.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Now, in Mesopotamia, there was a contrast. After the defeat of the British defenders in the Siege of Kut by the Ottomans, the British Imperial forces reorganized and captured Baghdad in March of 1917. And the British were aided by Mesopotamia by the local Arab and Assyrian tribesmen, while the Ottomans employed local Kurdish and Turkoman tribes. So further to the west comes the Suez Canal, and it was defended from Ottoman attacks in 1915 and 1916. In August, a German and Ottoman force was defeated at the Battle of Romani by the Australian and New Zealand Army Corps Mounted Division and the 52nd Lowland Infantry Division. Uh, that they are out of the United Kingdom. So, following this victory, a Egyptian expeditionary force advanced the Sinai Peninsula,
Oh,
pushing the Ottoman forces back in the Battle of Magdabhab in December and the Battle of Rafah on the border between the Egyptian Sani and Ottoman Palestine in January of 1917. So the Russian armies had generally a lot of success in the Caucasus campaign. A guy named Enver Pasha, who is the supreme commander of the Ottoman armed forces, was very ambitious and dreamed of reconquering Central Asia and areas that had been lost to Russia in the past. The thing is that he sucked as a commander.
no.
Yeah.
Ambition is good, but skill, you need that to get
Yeah.
anywhere.
He launched an offensive against the Russians in the Caucasus in December of 1914 with 100,000 troops.
Dude.
and insisted on a frontal attack against mountainous Russian positions in winter.
Okay. There's a lot of things wrong with that plan.
Yeah. Why don't you
Um,
tell everybody?
okay. You don't attack Russia in winter. That's number 1. If you read any history book about anybody that's tried that, they fail.
Yeah, because
Crossing
Russia
the
is
mountains
nothing but
also.
winter.
Yeah. I picture it in my mind as constantly snowing regardless of time of year, and then when it's winter, it's worse.
Yes.
So don't do it.
No.
And then crossing the mountains with a ton of men. Hannibal did that, or he tried with the Carthaginians when trying to invade Rome from the north. And to show people how confident he was, I was like, "Yeah, don't worry about it." He, like, tapped the mountain with his, spear or staff or some implement, causing an avalanche and killing, like, half of his army. Passing the mountains is tricky, so I have a feeling this is not gonna go well.
No, he lost 86% of his forces.
86% of 100,000. That's almost
Yeah.
100,000.
Almost 100,000, but it's well more than 50%.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
Yeah, no,
pretty
that's like
bad.
86,000.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, and this happened at the Battle of Sakri Kamish. So the Ottoman Empire, with German support, invaded Persia in December of 1914. Where is Persia now? What is Persia now called?
Oh, Persia is now Iran.
Exactly. Good job. You get a gold star.
Alright, makes up for that Belgrade debacle that I had earlier in this episode.
Oh, thanks for reminding me. I'm taking the star back.
No, dang it!
But they did this in an effort to cut off British and Russian access to petroleum reserves around Baku near the Caspian Sea. Persia, which was neutral, had long been under the spheres of British and Russian influence. And the Ottomans and Germans were aided by the Kurdish and Azari forces, and together with a large number of major Iranian tribes. So while the Russians and British had the support of Armenian and Assyrian forces, the Persian campaign was going to go on until 1918
Whoa.
and end in failure for the Ottomans and their friends. However, the Russian withdrawal from the war in 1917 led to Armenian and Assyrian forces who had up till now inflicted a series of defeats upon the forces of the Ottomans and their allies, being cut off from supply lines,
Oh, shoot.
meaning they're now outnumbered, outgunned, and isolated. So this forced them to fight and flee towards the British lines.
Yeah, that was a shock to all the, I guess, the Entente forces, when Russia pulled out. It's like, "Uh-oh, that's
That's a
terrible."
couple million people that we no longer have the help from.
Right, a whole front is gone.
Hmm.
And they were considered one of the bigger players, I mean, huge. And that's why Serbia had the confidence to kinda start this whole thing. And with them out of the picture, that's trouble, especially for the Balkans.
Yeah. So General Yudenrich, who was the Russian commander from 1915 to 16, drove the Turks out of the most of the southern Caucasus with a string of victories. During the 1916 campaign, the Russians defeated the Turks in the Erzurum offensive, allowing them to occupy Trabzon. In 1917, Russian Grand Duke Nicholas assumed command of the Caucasus Front. And Nicholas planned a railway from Russia, Georgia to the conquered territories so that French supplies could be brought up for a new offensive in 1917. But in March of 1917, the Tsar abdicated in the course of the February Revolution, and the Russian Caucasus army begins to fall apart.
Did he abdicate? I thought the, wasn't that whole family, like, taken out? Or am I thinking of
Well, yeah, they were taken out after the abdication. They were trying
oh,
to flee.
I see. Right, 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 right.
I believe when Lenin came back and took back the country. Any Russian listeners who are much more versed in their own history than we are, let us know.
Yeah, this isn't the Russian army podcast.
So the Arab revolt, instigated by the Arab Bureau of the British Foreign Office, started in June of 1916 with the Battle of Mecca, led by Sharif Hussein of Mecca, and ended with the Ottoman surrender of Damascus.
Whoa.
The Ottoman commander of Medina, Fakhri Pasha, resisted for more than 2.5 years during the siege of Medina,
Wow.
surrendering in January of 1919. That's a long siege.
I was gonna say, usually 6 months into a siege, things are desperate, and so they must have had some kind of secret water supply or food supply line or something. That's impressive.
Yeah. Uh, the Sensi tribe, which was along the border of Italian Libya and British Egypt, incited and armed incited and armed by the Turks and waged a small scale guerrilla war against Allied troops.
Hmm.
This caused the British to dispatch 12,000 troops to oppose them, and they were able to finally end that rebellion mid 1916. So, total Allied casualties on the Ottoman fronts amounted to 650,000.
Ugh.
Total Ottoman casualties were 725,000.
Wow. That's nuts.
Yeah, that's a lot of peeps. All right, let's go jump over to Italy and the Italians. So Italy had been allied with the German and Austro-Hungarian empires since 1882 as part of the Triple Alliance. You've
Yeah,
heard of that, yeah?
I have.
Yeah. Now, the nation had its own designs on Austro-Hungarian territory in Trento. The Austrian Lirette, uh, Rajica, and Dalmida. Now, Rome had a secret 1902 pact with France, which effectively nullified its part in the Triple Alliance. But of course, Rome has been its own country anyway, so.
Yeah, I don't think Italy was unified as we know it now until really I mean, I wanna say late 1800s. Like, it was divided into a bunch of city states, so that's unique.
Mhm. So, at the start of the war, Italy refused to commit troops. They used the argument that the Triple Alliance was defensive and that Austria Hungary was an aggressor. The Austro Hungarian government began negotiations to secure Italian neutrality, offering the French colony of Tunisia in return.
Oh,
Like, hey, we'll give you this colony if you like not attack us or anybody else.
yeah.
The Allies made a counteroffer in which Italy would receive the southern Tyrol, the Austrian littoral, and territory on the Dalmatian coast after they defeated Austria-Hungary. That's a lot
Yeah,
more.
it is. This seems like a very European way to go about coaxing countries into war. It's like, "Hey, if you join us and we win, you get this."
Yeah.
And, I think that was one of the I guess, not to dig too far into when, Russia withdrew from the war. One of the things they also did was publicized, like, in newspapers, all the agreements ahead of time with the Allies and how they would carve up different portions of the Ottoman Empire, Austro-Hungarian Empire, and just like, "Yeah, we're gonna parcel out this land and take what we can. That's the goal." And people were pretty dismayed because millions of people were dying, and the goal just seemed to be, "Oh, so countries can get land." And I think that really put a bad taste in people's mouths, and so this is right in line with that, and I think it's, I don't know, kind of it's foreign to me, no pun intended, as an American.
Oh, I think the pun was definitely intended.
It was, yeah, premeditated. I was waiting episodes and episodes to see how I could fit that in, and now it's done.
Mhm.
I'm gonna give
So
myself a gold star for the pun.
and I'm taking it back
Ah, shoot. I
'cause I
shouldn't have
called you
said
out on it.
anything.
So, this was formalized by the Treaty of London, and this was further encouraged by the Allied invasion of Turkey in April of 1915. So, Italy joined the Allies and declared war on Austria-Hungary on May 23rd. 15 months later, Italy declared war on Germany. So the Italians did have numerical superiority, but this advantage was lost because of the difficult terrain in which the fighting took place, as well as the strategies and tactics that they employed. They were not very good at that.
Hmm.
On the Taranto front, the Austro-Hungarians took advantage of the mountainous terrain, which favored the defender. And after a initial strategic retreat, the front remained largely static while the Austro-Hungarians engaged the Italians in hand-to-hand combat
Wow.
the entire summer.
That's intense. I think
Mhm.
modern warfare is very much at a distance, and so that's kind of a quite a throwback. I know it
Yes.
still happens.
Oh, it does. It
We're
it
still
does, but
trained.
it's much more rare.
Right.
In the Alpine and Dolomite fronts, the main battle line led through rock and ice, and often to an altitude of over 300 meters. I mean, 3,000 meters.
Whoa, okay.
So these guys were not only threatened by their enemy, but also by Mother Nature.
Mhm.
The fighting led to the formation of special units with mountain guides and new combat tactics. The Austro-Hungarians counterattacked in the Altipo of Anzango towards Verona and Padua in the spring of 1916, but they were defeated by the Italians.
Could see that. I would, in almost any mountain fight, whoever the home team is usually has the advantage.
Mhm. Beginning in 1915, the Italians under Cadorna mounted 11 offenses on the Isarno front along the Isonzo River northeast of Trieste. Of these 11 offenses, 5 were won by Italy, 3 were a tie, and 3 were repelled by Austro-Hungarians because they were on the higher ground.
If that's the one thing I learned from Star Wars, that's key, is the high ground.
Also, the stormtroopers need LASIK to fix their eyesight.
Is that what that is?
Yeah,
Man, they
because they
really should have cloned those, somebody with good eyesight.
well, that's why they can't hit the broadside of a barn. So after the victory, the front remained static for over a year, despite
Wow.
several Italian offenses. So the Central Powers launched a crushing offensive on October 26th of 1917, spearheaded by the Germans, and they achieved a victory at Caporetto. The Italian army was routed and retreated more than 62 miles to reorganize. The Italian chief of staff, Armando Diaz, ordered the army to stop their retreat and defend the Mont Grappa summit, where fortified defenses were constructed. The Italians then repelled the Austro Hungarian and German army, which stabilized the front at the Piave River. Um, so, because of the Italian army suffering heavy losses in the Battle of Caporotto, the Italian government started their conscription, the so called 99 Boys. This means that all men born in 1899 and prior who were 18 years and older and had to serve.
Oh, wow.
In 1918, the Austro-Hungarians failed to break through in a series of battles on the Piave and were finally decisively defeated in the Battle of Vittorio Veneto in October. On November 1st, the Italian Navy destroyed much of the Austro-Hungarian fleet stationed in Pula,
Hmm.
preventing it from being handed over to the new state of Slovens, Croats, and Serbs. On November 3rd, the Italians evaded Trieste from the sea, which was the same day the armistice of Villa Giusti was signed. By mid November of 1918, the Italian military occupied the entire former Austrian littoral and had seized control of the portion of the Malta that had been guaranteed to Italy by the London Pact.
I see.
They're like, oh, this is ours. We're moving in.
Yeah, yeah.
Austria Hungary surrendered on November 11th, 1918.
Well, I think that was when everybody stopped, right? That was the, Armistice Day or whatever? The 11th day of the 11th month at the 11th hour, etcetera, etcetera.
Yeah, November 11th, 1918. Yes, you are correct. It was, what day of the week was that?
I'm gonna guess Tuesday.
It was a Monday.
I was close, but no cigar.
All right. Well, that's okay. So, shall we go over to Romania?
I would love to. When
Okay.
are we going?
Right now.
Oh, you mean talking about it in the podcast, not on an aeroplane.
No, 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 no. Not on
I mean,
aeroplane.
yes, that's I knew that.
I
Yeah, I
can't
would love to talk about
afford
that.
I can't afford to go on a vacation to Romania.
Listeners, if you'd like to sponsor a trip for Dale to go to Romania, drop us a line. Listen to the end of the podcast to find out how.
Well, you'd have to go too. It'd have to be both of us.
Well, you're asking a lot of our listeners. I mean, I would love to, yes,
Well, there you go.
but you know,
All right. So Romania had been allied with the Central Power since 1882.
wow,
When the war began, it declared its neutrality. They also used the same reasons as Italy, saying that Austria Hungary were the aggressors. So that Romania had no obligation to join the war. On August 4th, 1916, Romania and the Entente signed the political treaty and military convention, which established the parameters of Romania's participation in the war. In return, it received the Allies' formal sanction for Transylvania. Uh,
that's
also,
right.
also they got Banat and other territories of Austria-Hungary to be annexed to them.
Mm.
This had a large support among the people, Romanians, not Austrian Hungarian
Oh yeah, I
Hungarians.
imagine. Right. Yeah.
Your look was like, huh?
don't think everybody was behind oh, yes, okay, well.
On August 27th of 1916, the Romanian army launched an attack against Austria-Hungary with a little bit of support from Russia. The Romanian offensive was initially successful in Transylvania, but a counterattack drove them back.
Mm,
As a result of the Battle of Bucharest, the Central Powers occupied it on December 6th, 1916. The fighting in Moldova continued until 1917, but Russia withdrawal from the war again meant that Romania was forced to sign an armistice with the Central Powers on December 9th of 1917.
mm.
They're like, "Oh, Russia's gone. We are about to get taken out. Hey, we want to be friends
Yeah,
now."
"Oh, do you wanna come to the negotiating table?" "No reason. Just thought
Yeah.
you'd be tired of fighting too."
hmm In January of 1918, Romanian forces established control over Bessaraba as the Russian army abandoned the province. Now, even though a treaty was signed by the Romanian and Bolshevik Russian government following talks between the 5th and 9th of March on about the withdrawal of Romanian forces within 2 months from Bessarabia, nah, Bessarabia, uh, on March 27th, Romania formally attached Bessarabia, indicated by a Romanian majority, to its territory based on a resolution passed by the assembled by a local assembly of that treaty on its unification with Romania,
So the people there, Bessarabia, or however you pronounce it,
which
voted to
is
see if they
probably
wanted
I
to j
probably I probably pronounced it wrong.
well, no, no, I definitely pronounced it wrong. So, that province voted to see if they wanted to join Romania, and then they said yes, and now they're part of Romania in the midst of this armistice.
Yep.
Wow, that's interesting.
Romania officially made peace with the Central Powers by signing the Treaty of Bucharest on May 7th, 1918. Under this treaty, Romania was obligated to end the war with the Central Powers and make small territorial concessions to Austria Hungary, ceding control of some passes in the Carpathian Mountains, and to grant oil concessions to Germany. In
Mm.
exchange, the Central Powers recognized the sovereignty of Romania over Bessaraba. The treaty was renounced in October of 1918 by the Alexandru Margulimian government, and Romania nominally re-entered the war on November 10th of 1918 against the Central Powers.
Oh, that's weird. I mean, yeah, this is a very unconventional war.
The next day, the Treaty of Bucharest was nullified by the terms of the Armistice of Campaign. So, total Romanian deaths from 1914 to 1918, military and civilian, was estimated at 748,000.
Wow, that's from one country.
Mhm. All right, we're going to jump over to the Eastern Front. This is a very big front.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Mhm. This is the front everybody talks about.
Well, I know, the idea was originally for the Germans to knock France out with a huge blow, and then they
Right,
could focus all their energy on Russia. That was
right.
pretty much the plan.
Yep.
It didn't work out that way. They got
Nope.
bogged down, and a Western front was established, and
Yep.
now Germany is fighting two fronts, well, along with Austria-Hungary, and I think to a limited extent the Ottomans, although I don't think they were on the Eastern Front per se.
So, The Russian plans for the start of the war called for simultaneous invasions of Austria Gallica and East Prussia.
Whoa.
Hmm. So Russia's initial advance into Gallica was largely successful. It was driven back from East Prussia by Hindenburg and Ludendorff at the battles of Tannenberg and the Masurian Lakes in August and September of 1914. Um, Russia's less developed industrial base and ineffective military leadership were instrumental in these events that were unfolding. By the spring of 1915, the Russians had retreated from Gallica, and in May, the Central Powers achieved a remarkable breakthrough on Poland's southern frontiers with the Gorlice Tarnow offensive. On August 5th, they captured Warsaw and forced the Russians to withdraw from Poland. But of course, this is also classic Russian. Classic Russia. Their infrastructure was really, really bad.
Yeah,
World War I and World War II.
definitely. I mean, they had a lot of economic problems, and so as a result, they really could not afford to defend themselves adequately with advancing technology. Like technology was advancing big time, not just with transportation, with rail or battleships. They were having a hard time keeping up even before war broke out. And I
Oh
think
yeah.
I had mentioned last episode about them trying to organize all the countries saying, "Hey, let's promise to stop development of weapons," because they couldn't keep up. They didn't want to fall too far behind.
Yeah, well, all they had was manpower.
Yep.
So despite their initial successes in June of 1916 uh, against the Austrians in eastern Gallica, the offensive was undermined by the reluctance of other Russian generals to commit their forces to support the victory. The Allied and Russian forces were revived only briefly by Romania's entry into the war on August 27th and initial gains into Transylvania. As Romania was rapidly pushed back by a combined Central Power offensive until the only region of Moldavia was left. All the while, unrest grew in Russia as the Tsar remained at the front. The increasingly incompetent rule of Empress Alexandra drew protests and resulted in the murder of her favorite guy. You know who this guy was?
Oh yeah, Rasputin.
Rasputin, yes. And this happened at the end of 1916. And he was like murdered like 4 or 5 times according to legend.
Well, yeah, they tried and they kept failing. Like stuff that should have killed a normal man, he just kind of like brushed it off, and it was stunning.
Yeah.
Um, we could take a deep dive into that, but I do want to say I think when they finally got him, supposedly he cursed the nation of Russia or like the leadership, like because of my death. I forgot how exactly how he worded it, but people say that is why the Bolsheviks took over. It's because of the curse.
Let's see. Well, I mean, everybody knows Rasputin was a witch, obviously.
Yeah, if you look at photos of him, his eyes are very mysterious. Like there's something going on.
Yeah. Now, let's see.
And apparently one of the reasons why the Empress was such a fan of Rasputin was he was keeping their son alive, who was a hemophiliac. And so the doctors of the day would try to do these things that would end up making him more sick. And she's like, "Oh, Rasputin, help heal my son." And he would. And so he would gain more and more favor in the court.
Yeah, exactly. When he was finally killed, took 3 gunshots, one point blank to his head. So on December 12th of 1916, after 10 brutal months of the Battle of Verdun and a successful offensive against Romania, Germany attempted to negotiate a peace with the Allies. This was rejected out of hand as, quote, a war ruse. Soon after this, the US president, who was
Woodrow Wilson.
exactly, he attempted to intervene as a peacemaker, asking in a note for both sides to state their demands. Lloyd George's war cabinet considered the German offer to be a ploy to create division among the Allies. After initial outrage and much talk, they took Wilson's note as a separate effort, signaling that the U.S. was on the verge of entering the war against Germany following the submarine outrages. While the Allies debated a response to Wilson's offer, the Germans chose to rebuff it in favor of a direct exchange of views. Learning of the German response, the Allied governments were free to make clear demands in the response of January 14th. They sought restoration of damages, the evacuation of occupied territories, reparations for France, Russia, and Romania, and a recognition of the principle of nationalities. This included the liberation of Italians, Slavs, Romanians, Czechoslovaks, and the creation of a free and united Poland.
What was it
With
before? I guess was it occupied by the Germans or the Russians? I think Russia may have had some control over it.
well, I believe it was German occupied.
That makes sense.
hmm so, with securityness in mind, the Allies sought guarantees that would prevent or limit future wars, complete with sanctions as a condition of any peace settlement. Of course, these negotiations failed, and the Allies rejected the German offer on the grounds that Germany had not put forward any specific proposals. All right, we're going to go ahead and stop here, and we're going to go ahead and honor one of our fallen angels with the help of HeroCards.us. Today, we're going to honor Colonel Robert Gould Shaw. His hometown was Boston, Massachusetts. He served with the U.S. Army 54th Massachusetts Volunteer Infantry Regiment. His date of sacrifice was July 18th, 1863. Killed in action at Fort Wagner on Morris Island near Charleston, South Carolina. He was 25. Born in 1837 to a prominent eri- eri- ah, aristocratic, eh, aristocratic family in Boston, Robert Gould Shaw's early life was one of privilege and security. The son of Francis George Shaw, a merchant and social reformer, and Sarah Blake Sturgis, an abolitionist. He attended private schools in New York and Switzerland and had private tours in Italy and Germany. Returning to the U.S. after a period of drifting and self indulgence, Shaw enrolled at Harvard. After years of disciplinary problems and failing to distinguish himself academically, he dropped out of school, returning to New York City to work at his uncle's mercantile farm. With his future uncertain, Shaw saw his life as a failure. He found his purpose with the outbreak of the Civil War in 1861, joining the 7th New York Infantry in the defense of Washington, D.C. His regiment was dissolved after 30 days. He then joined the Massachusetts 2nd as a second lieutenant. Raising to the ranks of captain after 2 years, twice wounded, Shaw miraculously survived the bloody battles of Cedar Mountain and Antietam. With President Lincoln's signing of the Emancipation Proclamation of 1863, Massachusetts Governor John Andrew, an ardent abolitionist, was eager to form the first black regiment from a northern state. He offered command of that regiment, the 54th, to Shaw. Shaw turned down the commission, which was personally delivered to him by his father. While Shaw opposed the Southern slavery system, he did not at first share his parents' zealous indignation to slavery. His reasons for declining the commission may have been in part due to his loyalty to his 2nd Massachusetts Regiment. His reluctance to take on the responsibility of such a highly publicized post, or his belief that a black regiment would never see action and be relegated to manual labor details.
Hmm.
Shaw's mother was deeply ashamed, calling his decision the bitterest disappointment. However, his reasoning, Shaw changed his mind and accepted the command. He organized the new regiment at Camp Magus in Raidville, Massachusetts. The regiment included 2 sons of abolitionist Frank Douglas and the grandson of author and poet Sojourner Truth.
Hmm.
Despite his stern disciplinary methods, Shaw quickly earned the love and respect of his men by insisting that they be issued regular uniforms and joining them in refusing substandard wages. His regiment was renewed. His regiment was rewarded with back pay after the war. Despite Shaw's objections, the regiment was forced to take part in the burning of the undefended town of Darren, Georgia. On July 16th, 1863, the 54th redeemed and distinguished itself by holding off a Confederate surprise attack at James Island, South Carolina. 2 days later, the regiment's shining hour would come with the courageous assault on Fort Wagner, a Confederate stronghold near Charleston, South Carolina. Shaw himself led the attack, rather than taking the customary position in the rear of his regiment. The 54th suffered heavy losses in a horrific battle against a strongly defended position. Of the approximately 650 men who went into battle, over 280 were killed, wounded, captured, or missing and presumed dead. Colonel Shaw was among the casualties, having been shot through the heart while shouting, "Forward 54th," and charging to the top of a sandy slope. Despite the bravery of the 54th Massachusetts Regiment and units from New York, Connecticut, New Hampshire, Maine, and Pennsylvania, the Union was unable to seize and hold Fort Wagner. Intending to insult the officer who had led a regiment of black soldiers, Confederate General John Hagoon refused to return Shaw's body to the Union Army, burying him in a mass grave with his black troops. When Shaw's family was later offered the opportunity to move their son's remains, his father proclaimed, quote, "We would not have his body removed from where it lies, surrounded by his brave and devoted soldiers. We can imagine no holier place than that in which he lies, among his brave and devoted followers, nor wish for him better company. What a bodyguard he has." The assault on Fort Wagner by Gould's 54th Massachusetts Regiment is one of the first major actions in which black soldiers fought for the Union. The valor of the soldiers convinced many politicians and army officers of their value, prompting the further enlistment of black soldiers to end slavery and preserve the Union. Shaw had become an unlikely martyr for the cause of emancipation. He and the 54th were later memorialized by Augustus St. Gaudens's bronze monument in downtown Boston, depicted in Peter Bronchard's book One Gallant Rush and in the 1989 film Glory. So, Colonel Robert Gould Shaw, we thank you.
Thank you.
Take us out.
Listeners, thank you so much for listening and sticking with us. Hopefully you enjoyed that overview of one aspect of World War I. If you would like to give us a little bit more insight, perhaps you're from one of these countries that experienced these difficulties or battles, or you have a relative that fought and has stories, let us know. You can contact us in one of a couple of different ways. You can email us. The email address is usnavyhistorypodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on X or X Twitter, however you prefer to say it. It's at USN History Pod. And then we also have a Discord server if you'd like a more interactive approach to discussing these things or asking us questions or finding out if I'm really a villain. I don't think I am. And I think this episode has proved it. Anyway, beside the point. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you. We couldn't really do this without you. I mean, we might, but it wouldn't be as exciting. You know what I mean? The fact that somebody's out there joining us on this journey is really wonderful. And if you like it, please feel free to rate and review and that helps us, and it spreads the word about what we're doing. So thank you.
And with that, we're going to wish you guys fair winds and following seas. Bye, everybody.
Bye.